The city of New never truly slept. Millions of neon lights painted the night sky in shades of pink and blue and green, their glow reflecting off the glass towers that stretched toward the clouds. Cargo ships drifted between the buildings like slow metal whales, carrying goods and passengers through the endless maze of streets and platforms. Down below, the people moved through their routines, unaware that their world was about to change forever. Lieutenant Maya Santos stood on the observation deck of the research station, her eyes fixed on the horizon. She was a small woman with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun and tired eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights. For 3 years she had worked on the Aegis project, designing and building a combat suit that could turn an ordinary human into something extraordinary. She had poured her soul into that machine, but she never expected to actually use it. The first warning came as a tremor that rattled the windows of the observation deck. Maya grabbed the railing to steady herself as alarms began screaming throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors behind her. Voices shouted through the intercom system, calling for emergency protocols. Commander Leo Grant appeared at her side within seconds. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and a face that had seen too many battles. His grey hair was cut short, and his jaw was set in a hard line as he stared at the sky. He did not speak at first, he simply pointed upward. Maya followed his gesture and felt her heart stop. Something was coming through the clouds. It was not a meteor or a satellite or any kind of human vessel. The ship that descended toward New was massive and ugly, its hull covered in scars and burn marks from countless battles. It looked ancient, like something dragged out of a nightmare from a forgotten age. There were no smooth lines or elegant curves. Every surface was brutal and functional, designed for war and nothing else. The ship did not land gently. It crashed into the commercial district with enough force to shatter windows for 3 in every direction. Buildings swayed and groaned. Power lines sparked and died. The neon lights flickered as the city's grid struggled to compensate for the sudden disruption. Leo grabbed his communicator and started barking orders. Evacuation protocols, military response teams, medical units on standby. His voice was calm and steady, but Maya could see the tension in his shoulders. Nobody had trained for this. Nobody had even imagined that something like this could happen. The ship's hatch opened with a sound like tearing metal. Steam and smoke poured out into the night air, creating a fog that swirled around the crash site. For a long moment, nothing emerged. The silence stretched on and on, broken only by the distant wail of sirens. Then he stepped out. Maya had studied alien biology as part of her work on the Aegis project. She had seen images and reports from deep space exploration missions. She thought she understood what other species might look like. She was wrong. The creature that emerged from the ship was nearly 4 meters tall. His body was a mountain of muscle wrapped in thick, leathery skin, the of dried blood. His arms were longer than a human's, ending in hands with claws that looked sharp enough to tear through steel. His face was flat and brutal, with a wide jaw filled with teeth and small yellow eyes that burned with intelligence and contempt. He called himself. His voice boomed across the ruined streets like thunder. He spoke in a language that the translation systems struggled to process, but his meaning was clear enough. He had come to Earth seeking a challenge. His people there had conquered 12 star systems through physical combat. They believed that true strength came from flesh and bone, not from machines and technology. They had heard about humanity, a young and weak species that hid behind their gadgets and tools. Wanted to prove that no amount of technology could stand against might. He demanded a champion. The evacuation of New began immediately. Thousands of people fled through the underground tunnels and emergency transit systems, their faces pale with fear. Military units formed a perimeter around the crash site, but nobody was foolish enough to engage the alien directly. The weapons they carried were designed for human threats, not monsters from another world. Leo watched the feeds from the surveillance drones circling the area, had not moved from the crash site. He stood there like a statue, his arms crossed over his massive chest, waiting. He seemed content to let the humans run and hide. He seemed certain that eventually someone would be brave enough or stupid enough to face him. Maya found Leo in the command center, surrounded by holographic displays and frantic officers. She pushed through the crowd until she stood directly in front of him. Her voice was quiet but firm when she spoke. She told him that she wanted to pilot the Aegis. Leo stared at her for a long moment. He knew what she was asking. The Aegis Mark IV was the most advanced combat system ever created by human hands, but it had never been tested in real combat. The neural interface was experimental and the power systems were unstable at high output. There was a very real chance that the suit would kill its pilot before the alien ever got the chance. Maya did not back down. She explained that she had designed the Aegis. She understood its systems better than anyone else on Earth. She knew its limits and its capabilities. If anyone could push the suit to its maximum potential, it was her. Leo asked her if she understood what she was volunteering for. He told her that had killed hundreds of warriors from other species. He told her that they were bred for combat and that their bodies could heal from wounds that would kill a human 10 times over. He told her that she was an engineer, not a soldier. Maya, she said she knew all of that, but she also knew that humanity could not afford to show weakness. If they refused the challenge, they would see it as proof that humans were not worth respecting. Other species would hear about it. Earth would become a target for every aggressive civilization in the galaxy. Someone had to fight. Leo closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, his decision was made. He gave her authorization to use the Aegis Mark IV. He told her that it would take her to the confrontation point in 15 minutes. Maya thanked him and turned to leave. She had work to do. The hangar beneath station was cold and quiet. The Aegis suit hung on its maintenance rack like a sleeping predator, its surface gleaming under the harsh white lights. Maya approached it slowly, her footsteps echoing in the empty space. She placed her hand on the chest plate and felt the cool metal against her skin. This was the moment she had been building toward for 3 years. Everything she had learned, everything she had created would be tested tonight. She took a deep breath and began the activation sequence. The suit opened like a flower, panels sliding apart to reveal the interior framework. Maya stepped inside and felt the armor close around her body. Neural interfaces connected to her cortex. Sensor systems came online, flooding her vision with data, power cells with contained energy. She was no longer just Maya Santos. She was something more, something capable of standing against the impossible. There was waiting on the launch pad. Maya climbed aboard and strapped herself into the harness as the engines roared to life. Through the viewport, she could see the neon glow of new spreading out beneath her. Somewhere in that maze of lights and shadows, a monster was waiting. She was going to meet him. The descended through the neon haze of new like a metal bird diving toward prey. Maya watched the city pass beneath her, streets that were normally packed with people now empty and silent. The evacuation had been efficient, but she could still see abandoned vehicles and scattered belongings left behind by those who fled in panic. The fear was everywhere, thick in the air like smoke from a fire. The pilot brought them down 3 blocks from the main intersection where waited. Maya unstrapped herself from the harness and moved toward the rear hatch. Her body felt strange inside the Aegis suit, lighter and at the same time. The neural interface translated her thoughts into movement with almost no delay, making the armor feel like a second skin rather than a machine. Leo's voice crackled through her communication system. He told her that the surveillance drones had eyes on the target, had not moved from his position. He was standing in the center of the intersection with his arms crossed, surrounded by the debris from his crashed ship. He looked almost bored. Maya thanked Leo and cut the connection. She needed to focus now. She needed to clear her mind of everything except the battle ahead. The hatch opened and she jumped. The Aegis boosters fired automatically, slowing her descent and getting her toward the landing zone. She touched down on the cracked pavement with a sound like thunder, her armored feet sinking slightly into the broken concrete. Neon signs buzzed and flickered around her, casting strange shadows across the empty storefronts and darkened windows. She started walking toward the intersection. Heard her coming before he saw her. His large ears twitched at the sound of her footsteps, and his yellow eyes narrowed as he turned to face the direction of the noise. When Maya finally stepped into view, emerging from the shadows between 2 towering buildings, the alien tilted his head and studied her with obvious curiosity. Then he laughed. The sound was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together in a landslide. It echoed off the glass towers surrounding them and rolled through the empty streets like distant thunder. Uncrossed his arms and pointed at Maya with one massive clawed finger. He spoke in his guttural language, and the translation system built into her helmet struggled to keep up. He was mocking her. He called her a small thing, a toy soldier wrapped in pretty metal. He said that he had fought warriors 3 times her size and crushed them beneath his feet. He asked if this was truly the best that humanity could offer. Maya did not respond. She stood perfectly still, her sensors analyzing everything about the alien in front of her. His height, his weight, his body temperature, his heart rate. The Aegis systems compiled the data into a threat assessment profile and highlighted potential weak points in his anatomy. There were not many. Grew impatient with her silence, he took a step forward and the ground trembled beneath his weight. He told her that words were meaningless anyway, only action mattered, only strength. He charged her. Maya had studied combat footage from other species who had encountered the. She knew that they were fast despite their size, capable of closing distances that should have been impossible for creatures so large, but knowing something and experiencing it were very different things. Moved like a freight train given flesh. One moment he was 20 meters away, The next he was right in front of her, his massive fist already swinging downward in a killing blow. The Aegis saved her life. The boosters fired before Maya even consciously registered the danger, launching her sideways in a blur of motion that left in the neon glow. His fist hit the ground where she had been standing and created a crater deep enough to swallow a car. Chunks of concrete flew through the air like shrapnel. Maya landed on the wall of a nearby building, her magnetic grips holding her in place. She had half a second to process what had just happened before pulled his fist from the crater and turned to face her again. There was no pause for breath, no moment of recovery. He simply adjusted his aim and struck again. She pushed off the wall as his fist punched through the concrete and glass behind her. The building groaned and shuddered from the impact. Maya activated her secondary thrusters and flew upward, putting distance between herself and the alien while her systems recalculated the threat assessment. The data was not encouraging, was than any of the intelligence reports had suggested. His reflexes were almost instantaneous, and the power behind his strikes was enough to destroy reinforced structures designed to withstand earthquakes. If even one of those blows connected with the Aegis, the fight would be over. But Maya had advantages too. The alien was strong, but he was not agile. His massive body could not change direction quickly, and his fighting style was straightforward, relying on overwhelming force rather than technique or strategy. She could work with that. Maya dove back toward the ground, her boosters screaming as she accelerated, saw her coming and prepared to meet her charge, his clawed hands reaching out to grab her from the air. She waited until the last possible moment, until she could see the reflection of her armor in his yellow eyes, and then she twisted. There was something she had practiced in simulations but never attempted in real conditions. Her body rotated in, passing through the gap between his grasping hands by. She landed on his shoulder and fired her plasma weapon directly into the joint where his arm met his torso. The blast was bright enough to light up the entire intersection, roared in pain and surprise as the superheated energy seared his flesh. He grabbed for her with his other hand, but she was already gone, leaping from his shoulder to the roof of a nearby transport vehicle. First blood belonged to humanity. Looked at the burn mark on his shoulder with something between disbelief and fascination. Dark fluid seeped from the wound, already beginning to slow as his regeneration kicked in. He touched the damaged flesh with one clawed finger and then looked at Maya with new respect in his eyes. He told her that she was quick, clever. He said that perhaps this fight would be more interesting than he expected. Maya allowed herself a small smile inside her helmet. She told him that he had no idea. Charged again, but this time he was more careful. He did not simply bull rush her with reckless abandon. He moved with purpose, cutting off her escape routes, forcing her toward the walls and obstacles that would limit her mobility. He was learning. Maya adapted. She used the environment to her advantage, bouncing off walls and vehicles, never staying in one place long enough for him to pin her down. She struck whenever she saw an opening, plasma bursts and micro-missiles hitting his legs and back and arms. Each hit drew blood, each hit made him. The intersection became a war zone, buildings collapsed, vehicles exploded, the neon signs shattered and sparked, filling the air with electric light and the smell of burning plastic. Maya and danced through the destruction, predator and prey changing roles with every passing second. Leo watched from the command center, his face pale and his hands gripping the edge of the display so hard his knuckles turned white. The data feeds showed Maya's vital signs elevated but stable. Her suit's power reserves were dropping steadily, but she was holding her own. He had never seen anything like it, a single human facing a nightmare from another world and refusing to die. Maya landed on a raised platform overlooking the intersection and took a moment to catch her breath. Her muscles ached despite the suit's support systems. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her teeth, but she was still standing, she was still fighting. Stood in the center of the devastation, surrounded by craters and debris, his body was covered in burn marks and wounds, but he showed no signs of slowing down. If anything, the damage seemed to energize him. His yellow eyes blazed with a fire that had nothing to do with anger. He was enjoying himself. He called out to her, his voice carrying across the ruined intersection. He told her that she fought well for such a fragile creature. He told her that her death would bring him great. Maya stood up straight and faced him. She told him that she was not planning to die tonight. Smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Neither was he. The battle spread beyond the intersection and into the surrounding streets, pursued Maya through the commercial district like a hunter chasing wounded prey, but she was neither wounded nor running. Every retreat was calculated, every dodge was part of a larger strategy. She was testing him, learning his patterns, searching for the weakness that would let her end this fight. 20 minutes had passed since the first exchange. 20 minutes of constant combat, constant motion, constant danger. Maya's body was exhausted beneath the armor, her muscles screaming for rest that she could not afford to take. The Aegis suit compensated as best it could, injecting stimulants into her bloodstream and supporting her movements with its mechanical systems. But there were limits to what technology could do. Showed no signs of fatigue. His regeneration had closed most of the wounds she had inflicted, leaving only faint scars where plasma burns had once marked his flesh. His movements were still fast and powerful, driven by an endless reserve of strength that seemed to grow stronger the longer the fight continued. His species had evolved for this. Prolonged combat was their natural state. Maya ducked beneath a swinging claw and rolled between his legs, firing upward as she passed. The plasma bolt caught him in the stomach, and he grunted with pain but did not slow. His foot came down where she had been an instant before, cracking the pavement into fragments. She was running out of options. Leo's voice came through her communication system, tight with concern. He told her that her power reserves were at 38%. Her plasma weapon was overheating from continuous use. Her micro-missile supply was nearly depleted. If the fight continued at this pace, she would be out of offensive capability within 10 minutes. Maya acknowledged the information but did not respond. She was too focused on staying alive. Grabbed a transport vehicle from the side of the street and hurled it at her like a toy. Maya boosted sideways, but the vehicle clipped her shoulder and sent her spinning through the air. She crashed through the window of a storefront and landed hard among racks of clothing and shattered display cases. Pain flared through her body despite the suit's shock absorption. Warning lights flashed across her vision, indicating minor damage to her left arm servo. She pushed herself upright and stumbled back toward the broken window just as a massive hand punched through the wall beside her. She barely escaped the collapsing building. The alien followed her into the street, tearing through walls and support beams like they were paper. His patience was running out. The small human had proven herself a worthy opponent, but the game had gone on long enough. It was time to end this. Maya landed on the elevated highway that ran through the heart of the commercial district. The road stretched out before her, empty and dark, except for the flickering emergency lights along its edges. She turned to face as he climbed up the support pillar and pulled himself onto the highway surface. He told her that she had earned his respect. He said that her name would be remembered among his people as a worthy adversary, but respect did not mean mercy. The challenge would end with one of them dead, and it would not be him. Maya's mind raced through possibilities. Direct combat was not working. Her weapons could hurt him but not fast enough to overcome his regeneration. Her speed advantage was meaningless if she could not deliver a decisive blow. She needed something else, something unexpected. The Aegis suit contained dozens of experimental systems that had never been tested in real conditions. Most of them were too dangerous or too unreliable for combat use, but one of them caught her attention as she scrolled through the options. The cryogenic projection system. Leo had insisted on including it in the suits against the advice of the engineering team. It was designed for industrial applications, meant to freeze equipment and machinery for repairs. Nobody knew what it would do to a living creature. The power requirements were enormous, and using it would drain her reserves to critical levels. It was a desperate gamble, but desperate was all she had left. Charged along the highway, his heavy footsteps shaking the entire structure. Maya stood her ground and watched him come. She needed him close for this to work. She needed him to commit to an attack that he could not break off. He raised both fists above his head to bring them down on her with all his strength. It was the same killing blow he had attempted at the start of the fight, the move that had created the first crater. He was confident that she would dodge, that she would leap aside at the last moment like she had done every time before. She did not dodge. Maya activated the cryogenic system and stepped forward into his attack. The projection beam fired from her chest plate, a concentrated stream of supercooled gas that hit directly in the center of his torso. The temperature dropped so fast that ice crystals formed in the air around them, glittering like diamonds in the neon light. His fist stopped from her head. His muscles locked up as the cold spread through his body, overwhelming his regeneration, freezing the blood in his veins. A layer of frost crept across his skin, starting from the impact point and spreading outward in all directions. He tried to speak, but his jaw would not move. He tried to step back, but his legs would not respond. His yellow eyes widened with shock and confusion as he realized what was happening. For the first time in his life, his body had failed him. Maya held the beam steady, pouring every remaining ounce of power into the cryogenic system. Warning lights screamed at her from every corner of her vision. Power reserves critical, system overload imminent, structural integrity compromised. She ignored all of it. fell to his knees. The impact shook the highway and sent cracks spiderwebbing across the surface. His massive body was completely covered in frost now, his movements reduced to tiny tremors as he fought against the cold that was killing him. His eyes found Maya's through the ice, and she saw something there that she had not expected. Not anger, not hatred, understanding. Maya cut the cryogenic beam and stepped back. Her suit was barely functional, running on emergency power alone. The servos in her legs whined with every movement, and half her sensor systems had gone dark, but she was still standing. Was not dead, the cold had stopped him, but his regeneration was already fighting back, slowly melting the ice that covered his body. Given time, he would recover. Given time, he would be able to fight again. Maya did not have time. She walked toward him on unsteady legs, her armor flickering and sparking with electrical discharges. She stopped directly in front of his frozen form and looked up at his face. Even on his knees, he was still taller than her. Even defeated, he was still terrifying. She told him that the fight was over. She said that he had lost, not because humans were stronger than, but because they were smarter. She told him that this was humanity's strength, the ability to adapt, to innovate, to find solutions that nobody else could imagine. Could not respond. The ice was still melting, but his vocal cords were not yet free. He could only listen. Maya continued. She told him that his people valued physical power above all else, and she understood that. But physical power had limits. There would always be a bigger creature, a stronger enemy, a more dangerous threat. The only way to truly survive in the universe was to become more than what nature had made you. She asked him if he understood. Slowly, painfully moved his head. It was barely a nod, just a tiny motion of his chin, but it was enough. Maya turned away from him and looked out over the ruined city. The neon lights were flickering back to life in some districts, their glow painting the smoke-filled sky in familiar. Sirens wailed in the distance. The first rays of dawn were beginning to appear on the horizon. She had won, but she did not feel victorious. She felt tired, scared, and very, very small. She had faced a monster from another world and survived through luck and desperation. If the cryogenic system had failed, if any of 1,000 things had gone differently, she would be dead. Leo's voice came through her communication system. He told her that containment teams were on their way. He told her that she had done the impossible. Maya did not respond. She simply stood there, watching the sunrise, waiting for the shaking in her hands to stop. The containment teams arrived within minutes of Maya's signal. Heavy transport vehicles surrounded the elevated highway, deploying specialized equipment designed for situations that nobody had ever expected to actually occur. Engineers and scientists worked frantically to construct a holding field around slowly recovering body, using technology that had been theoretical until that moment. Maya watched from a distance as they worked. Her suit had switched to minimal power mode, conserving what little energy remained for basic life support functions. She could barely move, her exhausted body finally catching up with her now that the adrenaline was fading. Every muscle ached, every breath hurt, but she refused to leave until she knew that was secured. Leo arrived on a military transport and rushed to her side. His face was a mixture of relief and concern as he helped her sit down on the edge of the highway barrier. He told her that she looked terrible. She told him that he should see the other guy. It was a weak joke, but Leo laughed anyway. The tension of the past hours needed some release. Medical teams surrounded her and began running diagnostic scans through the damaged armor. They reported that she had multiple stress fractures in her ribs and a hairline crack in her left collarbone. Her neural interface had overloaded during the cryogenic discharge, causing minor damage to the nerve clusters in her spine. She would need surgery and months of rehabilitation before she was fully recovered. Maya accepted the information with a tired nod. She had expected worse. The scientists managed to stabilize the containment field around just as the last of the ice melted from his body. The alien stirred within the energy barrier, his massive form slowly regaining mobility. His yellow eyes opened and found Maya across the distance between them. He did not try to break free. He did not rage against his imprisonment. He simply watched her with an expression that she could not quite read. A diplomatic shuttle arrived from the orbital station 2 hours later, carrying representatives from the United Earth Council. They were nervous, uncertain creatures in expensive suits who clearly had no idea how to handle the situation. First contact with an aggressive alien species was not something that any of them had trained for. Maya was asked to attend the initial negotiations despite her injuries. She refused at first, that she was an engineer, not a diplomat, but Leo convinced her that would only speak to someone he respected, and she was the only human who had earned that respect. The meeting took place in a temporary structure erected next to the containment field. Maya sat across from with only an energy barrier between them. her battered body supported by a medical chair that compensated for her injuries. She looked small and fragile in the presence of the alien giant, but there was no fear in her eyes. Spoke first, his voice was quieter than before, less booming and aggressive. He told her that he had never been defeated in single combat. He said that his people had no concept of surrender, no word for admitting weakness. The shame of his loss would follow him for the rest of his life. Maya told him that there was no shame in losing to a worthy opponent. She said that the battle had been close, closer than anyone watching could have imagined. If circumstances had been slightly different, the outcome might have changed. Considered her words. He asked her why she had stopped the cryogenic attack before it killed him. He said that any warrior would have finished the fight with a killing blow. Mercy was not a concept his people understood. Maya thought about her answer for a long moment. She told him that killing was not the same as winning. She said that proving humanity's strength did not require his death. She told him that leaving him alive sent a more powerful message than his corpse ever could. The alien tilted his massive head, processing this new information. His people measured victory by the bodies of their enemies. The idea that strength could be demonstrated without killing was foreign to everything he had been taught. He asked her to explain. Maya leaned forward in her chair, the pain that shot through her damaged ribs. She told him that the way was effective but limited. Physical dominance could only take a species so far. Eventually they would encounter an enemy they could not defeat through strength alone, and without the ability to adapt, they would be destroyed. She told him that humanity had learned this lesson long ago. Their ancestors had been weak and fragile, prey animals on a world filled with predators. They survived not by becoming the strongest, but by becoming the smartest. They built tools and weapons. They developed strategies and tactics. They learned to work together against threats that no individual could face alone. Listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke again. He told her that his people had heard about humanity before he came to Earth. They called humans the machine builders, the tool users, the species that hid behind technology because they were too weak to fight on their own. He had come here to prove that those machines were worthless, that true strength could not be manufactured. He admitted that he was wrong. The words seemed to cost him something. His species did not admit error easily, but was not a fool. He had felt the cryogenic beam freeze his blood. He had experienced the terrifying helplessness of a body that refused to respond. And he had seen the determination in Maya's eyes as she stood before him, tiny and fragile and absolutely refusing to die. That was a kind of strength his people had never considered. Maya asked him what would happen now. She wanted to know if they would seek revenge for his defeat, if they would send more warriors to challenge Earth. Shook his massive head. He told her that his people followed a strict code of he had issued the challenge and lost. The matter was settled. Attacking Earth now would be a violation of everything they believed in. But more importantly, he said, his defeat would change how his people viewed humanity. The machine builders were no longer prey to be conquered. They were potential allies, potential partners, potential equals. The message he would send back to his would reshape policy toward Earth for generations. Maya felt something loosen in her chest that she had not even realized was tight. The fear that had been building since ship first appeared in the sky began to fade, replaced by a cautious hope that perhaps something good could come from this nightmare. She asked him if he would be willing to share information about his people, their culture, their technology, their knowledge of the galaxy. She told him that humanity was still young among the stars, still learning about the universe they had entered. Any help he could provide would be valuable. Considered the request. He told her that did not typically share their knowledge with other species. They believed that strength should be earned, not given. But then he smiled, a strange expression on his alien face that showed rows of sharp teeth. He said that perhaps it was time for his people to learn new ways. Perhaps the machine builders had something to teach them after all. Maya smiled back. She told him that she thought this could be the beginning of something important. The negotiations continued for several more hours, but the foundation had been laid. By the time the sun set on new again, the first steps toward peaceful relations between humanity and the had been taken. It was not a treaty or an alliance, not yet, but it was a start. Maya was carried out of the meeting on a medical stretcher, her body finally giving in to the exhaustion she had been fighting. But as the medics loaded her into the transport vehicle, she looked back at one final time. The alien raised one massive hand in what might have been a salute. She raised her own hand in response, and then the doors closed between them. 3 months passed before Maya was cleared to return to active duty. The surgery on her spine had been successful, but the rehabilitation was long and painful. She spent weeks learning to walk again, then learning to run. then finally returning to the training simulators where she had first practiced the moves that saved her life. The world had changed while she recovered. News of her battle with had spread across every continent, turning her into a hero whether she wanted the attention or not. Her face appeared on news broadcasts and magazine covers. Children wore costumes that looked like the Aegis armor. Politicians used her name in speeches about human resilience and determination. Maya hated all of it. She was not a hero, she was an engineer who had gotten lucky. The cryogenic system could have failed, her power reserves could have run out sooner. Any of 100 tiny variables could have changed the outcome of the fight. She survived not because she was special, but because the odds happened to break in her. Leo understood. He visited her often during her recovery, bringing reports about the ongoing negotiations with thee and updates about the reconstruction of New. He never treated her like a celebrity or a symbol. He treated her like what she was, a colleague and friend who had been through something terrible and needed time to process it. Remained on Earth as a diplomatic envoy, living in a specially constructed facility outside the city. Maya visited him once, about 6 weeks after the battle. She wanted to see how he was adapting to his new role. She found him in the exercise yard, lifting weights that would have crushed a normal human. His body had fully regenerated from the damage she inflicted, leaving only faint scars where the worst burns had been. He looked healthy, perhaps even content, but there was something different about him, something she could not quite identify until he spoke. He told her that he had been communicating with his people back home. He said that the message he sent about his defeat had caused controversy among the leadership. Some wanted to ignore his report and continue treating humanity as a weak species to be conquered. Others argued that his experience proved humans were more dangerous than they appeared. Maya asked which side was winning the argument. Smiled that strange, toothy smile. He told her that he was winning. He said that his reputation as an undefeated warrior gave his words weight that others could not match. When he spoke about humanity's strength, his people listened. He told her that 3 ships had already departed for Earth, carrying not warriors but scholars. They wanted to study human technology, to understand how such a fragile species could create tools that overcame biological limitations. It was unprecedented in history. Maya felt a warmth spread through her chest at the news. The battle had cost her so much, months of pain and recovery, nightmares that still woke her in the middle of the night. But if it led to genuine cooperation between their species, perhaps the price had been worth paying. She asked if he was happy with his new role. She wanted to know if he missed the life he had before, the endless pursuit of combat and conquest. The alien was quiet for a long time before. He told her that he had spent his entire life measuring his worth through victory. Every battle won was another proof that he deserved to exist. Every enemy defeated was another step toward the perfect warrior he aspired to become. But his defeat on Earth had shattered that framework. He lost, and yet he still existed. He was still valuable, still respected, still capable of contributing to his people's future. The realization had forced him to reconsider everything he believed about himself and his place in the universe. He told her that he was not happy, not exactly, but he was learning, and perhaps that was more important than happiness. Maya, she understood that feeling all too well. The reconstruction of New took nearly a year to complete. The commercial district where they had fought was rebuilt with new materials and improved infrastructure, becoming a symbol of human resilience in the face of seemingly impossible odds. A monument was erected at the intersection where the battle reached its climax, a simple stone marker with an inscription that read, "Here humanity proved its worth among the stars." Maya attended the dedication ceremony, standing in the front row with Leo and the other officials who had been involved in the crisis response. She wore civilian clothes, having retired from active service to return to her research position at station. The Aegis Mark V was already in development, incorporating lessons learned from her battle with. The ceremony was long and filled with speeches from politicians who had not been there that night. Maya tuned most of it out, her attention drifting to the crowd of ordinary citizens who had come to watch. She saw families with children, young couples holding hands, elderly people who remembered a time before humanity knew it was not alone in the universe. These were the people she had fought for, not the politicians or the generals or the news anchors who had turned her into a symbol. The regular, everyday humans who just wanted to live their lives without fear of monsters from the stars. She caught Sai across the crowd. The alien had been invited to attend as a gesture of the new friendship between their species. He looked out of place among the much smaller humans surrounding him, but nobody seemed afraid. The children pointed and whispered excitedly. Some adults actually approached him for photographs. Raised his hand in that same gesture he had made at their last meeting. Maya returned it with a small smile. When the ceremony ended, she slipped away from the crowd and found a quiet spot overlooking the rebuilt intersection. The neon signs were brighter than ever, casting their glow across the fresh pavement and gleaming buildings. Music drifted from nearby restaurants where people had gathered to celebrate the occasion. Leo found her there, as she knew he would. He stood beside her in comfortable silence for a few minutes before speaking. He told her that the scholars had made contact with other alien civilizations on behalf of humanity. Species that had previously ignored Earth were now requesting diplomatic meetings. The galaxy was taking notice of the machine builders. Maya asked if that was a good thing. Leo shrugged. He said that it was a complicated thing. More attention meant more opportunities, but also more risks. There were other species out there like the beings who measured worth through strength and conquest. Humanity would face more challenges in the years ahead. But they had proven they could rise to meet those challenges. A single engineer in an experimental suit had defeated an alien warrior bred for combat. If that was possible, then perhaps anything was. Maya looked out at the neon glow of new and thought about the future. She thought about the Aegis Mark V waiting for her in the lab. She thought about the alien scholars studying human technology. She thought about all the unknown threats lurking among the stars. She told Leo that she was ready. He asked her what she meant. She said that whatever came next, whatever new challenges the universe threw at humanity, she would be ready to face them. Not because she was brave or special or destined for greatness, but because she was human, and that was what humans did. They adapted, they innovated, they found ways to survive that nobody else could imagine. Leo smiled and put his hand on her shoulder. He told her that was exactly what he wanted to hear. They stood together and watched the neon lights flicker and dance, two small figures against the vast darkness of the universe. Somewhere out there, new challenges were waiting. New monsters were to test humanity's resolve. But for now, the night was peaceful, the city was alive, and Maya Santos, the engineer who had stared down an alien giant and refused to die, was ready for whatever came next. The stars above seemed to shine a little brighter, as if the universe itself was taking notice of the small, stubborn species that called Earth home. And perhaps, in its own way, it was beginning to understand what humans had known all along. Size and strength were not the only measures of worth. Sometimes the smallest beings cast the longest shadows.